Hi, and welcome to this presentation on how to measure business transformation. Now, there's a lot in this title, and we will try to unpack it all. But first, I'd like to start by asking you a few rhetorical questions. See if any of these apply to you. We know we need new technology to fix our issues, but how do we know which is the best fit? Our new application is up and running, but is it delivering the cost savings that we expected? Which projects will give us the biggest return for our limited budget? Data issues are killing us in the field. Which processes need to be improved? And we've heard these questions asked, but often we can't answer them. Or the answers we come up with just turn out to be wrong. But you don't find out until 2 years later when it's really just too late. Digital transformation seems to be the common answer to these questions, and many of you are probably in the middle of some type of transformation initiative now. Now, in our opinion, transformation is an overused term. It can mean anything today, but is most likely used to sell new technology and consulting packages. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to use this definition. Transformation is a profound and radical change through innovation and creativity produced by small, measured, incremental steps. We will show you how Insight, powered by Link, is the key to powering this transformation. But first, we're going to cover a couple of other quick topics. It's important that we look at IT project failure rates. Standish Group in 2015 produced the Chaos Report, and in that report said 71% of IT projects were either challenged or outright failed. Now, something to put a pin in here is that 62% of small IT projects succeeded. In the book Crossing the Data Delta, 70 to 80% of business intelligence projects failed. And why? Because the data. So there's a few takeaways here. First, small projects are more successful, pointing to the value of incremental change. Now, Insight plays a key role in the ability to identify small areas of large potential impact. Two, a big factor in failure is data, which is where Insight really goes to work. But why so much failure? Mainly projects fail because we get the cart before the horse. Cart being technology and the horse being the data. So what does that look like? Well, we see someone else succeed with a piece of technology, so we decide to use it too, but mimicking tactics without a strategy is a recipe for failure. Or we see a shiny new piece of technology, and then we just go and build a business case to support that. And it works sometimes, but the results are fairly unpredictable. According to Douglas Laney in the book Infonomics, many senior executives talk about information as one of their most important assets, but few behave as if it is. Well, why is this important? Well, for over 20 years, we've been engaged in delivering technology solutions. And sometimes projects succeed and sometimes they don't, and that's regardless of whether the technology works or not. We believe it's directly related to this statement. We are going to show you how to put information first, and in the process, you will understand how to achieve actual business transformation as opposed to better automation of broken processes. You'll understand how to measure information value and create an objective business case for technology in support of a strategy. You'll understand information supply chains and information value flow modeling and how they support transformation and project justification. And finally, you'll understand how to use an information flow model as the system of record and tool for measuring your business transformation. Actual transformation requires a paradigm shift in the way utilities approach digitalization. We need to start with investment in our information supply chains. Now, automation can be part of the process of transformation. However, since information is at the heart of achieving business outcomes, we really should start there. So transformation is never simply automation, which is an IT-first approach. Transformation is an incremental change, not a big bang. It starts with data and information being treated as an asset. Assets have value, so how do you measure the value of information? For example, how many of you have purchased technology only to have to customize it to fit the old way of doing things? And how many of you could say how much that is actually costing you? Let's talk a little more about the value of information. Technology is used to produce information that supports business outcomes. For example, an OMS processes and produces information to keep power flowing to the customers. Information is the lifeblood of business management. Again, how the business runs outage restoration processes is based on the information available, where the outage is, what's required to repair it, etc. Decision support. Information is what everyone uses to do their jobs. It's also what is needed to be able to choose the technologies that can enable business strategy. We talked about value. Now let's talk about the things that detract from value. Information waste is any activity using or requiring information performed by people or systems which is not as efficient and effective as it could or should be. Information waste adds cost to an information flow. So, for example, manual processes, which could be automated. Duplication of effort. We have a client, for example, who would do data entry in the field and then using 2 computer screens back in the office, re-enter all the data into the GIS that they had already entered once in the field. Dark data. This is data which is collected, stored, but never used, and it adds cost in terms of the processes required to capture it in the first place. Having data and information available, which is not authoritative, is also a risk should someone find it. Let's assume that they find it and they assume it's accurate and they start to use it within business systems and processes, and it turns out to be an error. Delayed availability of data. Valuable information should be available when it's needed. We have another client, for example, who does their as-built work on paper, and it often sits on the desk of the designer while it is actually energized in the field, and now it's not in the OMS, and it causes some serious safety problems. And finally, paper-based processes. Enough said there. Field work done on paper, just a huge waste. This is where Insight, powered by Link, really tie all this together. The next couple of concepts I'd like to introduce are actually supported through the Link functionality. And those concepts are information supply chains and information value flow modeling. An information supply chain connects every asset in an organization, say information, processes, systems, people, to the purpose that they are supporting. Link has this functionality. Now we're going to see this model throughout the rest of this presentation, so let's make sure that you grasp it here. An action creates information, which supports another action, which creates more information, and supports, finally, an outcome. Systems either store or supply information. They can also automate actions, and people can use systems to perform actions, or people can perform actions directly. This, in a nutshell, is the language of Link. Information flow modeling is the process used to understand how information flows through your entire organization, not just your information systems. This view exposes everything that is touched by and touches your information. We'll show you how with Insight and Link, high-value improvements are easily identified, how it removes emotion, platform, vendor, and technical considerations from any evaluation, how decisions can be made quickly and in the best interest of the business, how projects become smaller, more clearly defined, and yield greater success, how IT and non-technical executives can understand and participate in the strategic direction, how it links IT and operations to business strategy. With the previous slide in mind, let's take a look at the Link language again. This is a very oversimplified model for the sake of illustration. And bear in mind that this can create extremely detailed models and can handle any scenario, as you'll see as we go along. But for now, let's just focus on this. So we have a new service request, and that new service request creates a project detail, and that supports the project design action, which creates a cost estimate and eventually delivers a quote as the outcome. The GIS stores the project detail, and the GIS is used by the design engineer to perform project design. So as you can see, the Link language easily creates a narrative of the flow of information through an organization.
Now we're going to take a deeper dive into how Insight can actually produce value for you and your organization. Here we're going to talk about a work packet construction flow within an organization. We start with information input. In this case, we can call it a construction packet. It's a paper packet. And our output could be an application, which is an updated GIS in this particular instance. If we connect those two, it builds a template for us. And then we'll start by working with the initial capture. And in this initial capture, we're creating a construction packet. We can add a individual to this to say this person is actually doing this bit of work. In this case, we're going to call them a designer. And then we can also put in here an hourly rate for that individual. In this case, we're going to say that the designer is worth about $75 an hour. And then we'll go to the action. And on the action, we can put in the duration and the frequency of how long something takes to perform. For example, in this case, it occurs 500 times a year. It takes about 15 minutes to do. Gives us the total cost to create that paper packet, about $9,375. And then we'll continue on and go to the next action. Call this review packet. And we can also add another person to this to do the work. And in this case, we'll say it's the foreman that's going to be doing this. Foreman, we'll say, is worth about $90 an hour. And then again, we go back to the action, put in the duration and frequency, and that will aggregate the hourly rate into the duration and frequency over the course of a year and give us a total cost of about $45,000. And we'll go through this entire flow and do this until we've got the cost of all the information outlined and dealt with. Now let's take a look at an actual scenario, field asset updates. In this case, we've created two different flows. One flow, and this is very similar to the one we just looked at, is a manual flow. It goes through all the manual pieces to get to what we would call the outcome, or the new gas service in this case. We created another flow, which was the automated flow, and it shows usage of different applications to get the same work done. We've put in all the value and cost associated with all the people involved to get us to this new gas service. Now we can jump right over to our dashboards to start taking a look at all of the really important information. And in this case, a cost comparison of manual, which is $204,000, versus automated, which is $65,000. And of course, you can see all of the cost of the various actions that were in play. And now we can go and actually take a look at this by people. First person we'll look at as a designer. We get an overall summary dashboard here. And then we can go down here to their job description and basically see all the actions they perform and all the information outputs that are a resultant of those actions. And then we can go down further, look at the action summary once again, and take a look at the cost. And we can look at all of the supported outcomes, all the information assets produced by that particular individual or that group of individuals, as well as the actions performed and the systems used. Well, now we can go over and we can take a look at the foreman in the same way. Again, we have the summary. We have their actions by value, cost, and annual hours. We can look at the value cost matrix here and really get a good idea of what's being done. Again, their job description, all the actions and information outputs, and the action summary and cost. And again, all of the same things here. This gives us a real good view of what is being done and how much it's costing us, where we're spending our money, and whether or not we're getting the value we need to get, or whether we're actually wasting a lot of money. It's a very powerful tool. I want to come back to the people dashboard to really illustrate the power of this tool. On one axis here, we can see that we have value, and on the other axis, we have the cost. And the value axis, when it gets to the 70 value, we can see that's the real high value actions that we value as an organization. Then down at the 10, that's a lower value, obviously. Then we go up to cost. Cost is self-explanatory. Now, if we really go in here and look, we can see that this create work packet with an annual cost of $365,000 is a bit of a low value item, but extremely high cost. So we know right now by looking at this in 2 seconds that this is a place where we need to go to work, and we can really save some money in producing that information. And we can repeat that exercise for everything here. Obviously, the high value, high cost items, we could probably save those till later on. There may be a way to lower cost on those, but we're going to focus first on these low value, higher cost items. And it gives us a direct view into where we can really get the most bang for our buck. Let's also take a closer look at the people pivot chart. Again, in here we have the designer, and we see all the actions that designer takes. It could be considered a job description, if you will. It also has all of the information outputs that they're responsible for producing, and all of the outcomes, the business outcomes that those information outputs support. So this is a really nice way to see if someone's being over or underutilized. This could also be a description for, say for designers, it could be a group of people. But you can take this down as granular as you like. You could say designer Bob, designer Fred, and you could have very specific sets of actions that each designer is taking. Of course, that would show up in your flow as well. And this is another really powerful tool to be able to look at your workforce to see who's being over or under allocated. Insight also supports the DevOps process, which is closely linked to Agile. We're not going to talk about that here, but we will be showing this in a future video. And finally, Insight is an objective decision support tool. We can look at as-is processes and evaluate the cost and identify waste. We look at the to-be processes to reduce cost, eliminate waste, and expand capability. Business case and ROI, we compare as-is, to-be cost and value, value-based decision selection, prioritize investment, value-based investment, in other words, like we showed in that slide with the value to cost matrix, you can see where the low cost or the low value items that are high cost need to be taken on first. Implementation, value-based development cycles, such as Agile and DevOps. And we can measure the results. We can do flows at the end to measure the actual values of the improvements that we've undertaken. So what have you learned? Well, we've learned how to achieve business transformation as opposed to automation, how to measure value and create an objective business case based on information flow modeling. Hopefully you understand information supply chains and information flow modeling and how they support transformation and project justification. And you can now see how this can and should be used everywhere and anywhere in your business. That's all we've got for today. Thank you very much for watching.